I mean, Elon Musk, he did come up with that statement last week, and that's had a massive effect on price of nickel, your share price, and it's got people's attention, looking towards nickel. But you've got a nickel sulfide project, and we have talked in some of our weekly insight sessions around, laterites, and we've done one show on sort of dirty nickel. So he's kind of helped people understand that he will invest in nickel projects if they are sustainable, if they're done in an environmentally friendly way. I mean, aren't they all environmentally friendly? I mean, as far as mining goes?
No, I mean, that's the big, that we sort of alluded to in different things. I mean, nickel has a dirty nickel issue. The bulk of the growth over the last 5 years and where the bulk of the growth is going forward has come from, nickel pig iron projects in Indonesia. And, to make ferronickel, to make nickel pig iron, you use a huge amount of electricity. And all those projects are using coal-fired electricity to generate it all. So when each one of those projects is using somewhere in the order of 25 to 30 tons of coal to make 1 ton of nickel. That in turn is 90 tons of CO2 emissions per ton of nickel. So all of a sudden you take 50 kilos of that kind of nickel or nickel that's related to that, and all of a sudden you're strapping 4 tons of CO2 to the Tesla that's got 50 kilos of nickel under the bottom. I'm not sure that's what, Elon Musk had in mind when he was, wanting to build Tesla to sort of change our impact on the environment. And again, consumers don't want to, buy a car and end up having a whole pile of CO2 that comes, that comes along with it. So, the fact that, that's where he went to, immediately after saying we need as much as we can, as soon as we can is really dry, that is a fundamental issue for them, that they just can't get clean enough nickel to meet their objectives.
Okay. So basically, Indonesians, Chinese, they don't care. They can get funding wherever. So what about laterite projects outside of those jurisdictions? Do you think that they're going to find it just that little bit harder to get funding? Or do the big institutions and funds not mind, and they're really just concerned about, the bottom line?
Well, the coal-based ferronickel projects in general are going to really struggle here because, not only, on an economics perspective, you're now competing against these massive facilities that are being built in Indonesia. So your project itself is at a disadvantage scale-wise to these businesses. If you're using coal in the rest of the world to generate your nickel, again, if the Indonesians are going to dominate the Chinese market and you're left supplying your product to the rest of the world, are you going to have a market there when you either have to start paying for the carbon that you're generating, or whether people will say, no, as long as I have an alternative that's zero or lower carbon, then I'm not interested. There are ferronickel projects, that do have, access to hydroelectric power or access to natural gas. So, those obviously have a much lower environmental footprint than the coal-based powers. But again, those are the kind of design choices people are going to have to make in terms of the projects that, that they choose to fund going forward.
So who gets financed first, sulfide projects or laterite projects?
Oh, I think, sulfide projects that again have, particularly the ones that have the benefits that we do at Crawford, where you have these rocks that do absorb CO2. And again, I encourage people, there's a whole pile of research on carbon sequestration using serpentine rock-based systems. They're actually looking at injecting CO2 into solid rock as opposed to just using the tailings and the waste rock that are left over. So, it's a real solution. And so again, I think increasingly as we move forward here, there's going to be much more capital available to those projects, that are able to deliver a zero carbon or low carbon versus, those projects that generate 90 tons of carbon for every ton of nickel that gets produced.
But what are you trying to do here? Because not only have you announced a wholly owned subsidiary, NetZero Metals, but you're also applied for trademarks. Are you trying to get investors more aware of specific issues, or as I say, is this just for your own benefit, or is it industry wide? I mean, I guess is what I'm asking.
Yeah, I know. I mean, again, we've been talking now about carbon for several decades, and several decades in, industry still hasn't managed to do it. If you look at most of the larger resource companies, they've got by 2050, we're going to be, net carbon neutral. That's 30 years from now, and that's a lot of carbon between, now and then. And, this year we, changed all the light bulbs in the office to be, LED lights, but fundamentally they're making iron ore and coal that go to make steel that are going to generate several tons of carbon for every, ton of product that they're shipping out. So, I think it's time for those large companies to look themselves in the face and say, okay, how do we as an industry, find end-to-end solutions to be able to deliver zero carbon production? Again, we're talking, we are going to build look to build downstream facilities, in the area next to this mine, because again, the off gas from these processing plants is the issue, and we'll have an ability to take that off gas and route it through, the tailings and waste rock and make that carbon issue disappear. Other companies should be thinking about that and should be able to do, should be looking for those opportunities to do it, as opposed to, we're going to get to it in 20 or 30 years.